Good morning, Summit Church. My name is Daniel. I'm the associate pastor here, and I want to be the first to welcome you this morning and say that we are so glad that you're here as we celebrate 4 years of Summit Church. If it's your first Sunday with us, we want to ask if you would please fill out the Connect card you received on the way in. We'd love for you to fill that out so that we can connect with you, get to know you a little bit better, and let you get to know Summit Church as well. When you fill that card out, you can drop it in either one of our generosity stations on the way out this morning when you're headed out to lunch. I don't know about you, but coming in here every Sunday is one of the highlights of my week. And so I, for one, am so grateful for everything that God has done here in Summit Church over the last 4 years. So as we open our service in prayer this morning, I want to ask if you would just join me in thanking God for everything that He's done here. God, we come before you today just thankful. We're so thankful for everything that you've done. God, I thank you for Summit Church. I thank you for each and every person that calls this church home. God, I thank you for each person that's here this morning and it's their first time here. God, I just thank you so much for the community that you've blessed us with here in Lolo, Montana. God, we know that without you that we can't do anything and that ultimately, Lord, this is your church. Lord, I thank you for the small part that I get to be in that and that each and every one of us gets to be in that. And I ask that as we go into our worship service this morning, that we bring you glory through our song. And then as we go into the opening of your word, as Pastor Josh brings the message, Lord, I ask that it touches our hearts. God, not just goes into our minds and sounds good, Lord, but that it changes the way that we live our life each and every day. God, we love you. We thank you for everything that you do for us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Pastor Josh, one of the pastors here at Summit Church, and we just want to echo Pastor Daniel's welcome to our 4th anniversary. Our birthday bash is what we're calling it. And this is our 4th anniversary, and in years past, we've always done a lot of looking back at where we've come from. But today, we kind of want to just look to the future and look to what God has in store for us. What we love the past that we have, but we're more excited about where God is taking us and excited that this room is full of you, and that's what makes Summit Church what it is. And our theme for this entire 2025 is the fact that we are family. We are not meant to do this life alone. And families are one of the most unique things that God has ever created, is it not? When we get family right, nothing beats it, right? When we're all firing on all cylinders, man, the family unit is a really, really awesome thing. But then if your family is anything like mine, sometimes it doesn't fire on all cylinders. And then it is the most dysfunctional thing that you've ever experienced, right? I don't know if you guys have ever been to Thanksgiving dinner and politics comes up. Woo, right? Family, you love them, but then it turns sideways really, really quick. There was this family that I recently read about, Carl and Tiffany Ledbetter. This family was so unique that the Wall Street Journal in 2004 put them on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and they called it the dysfunctional family. That's not a good start, right? This family actually designed their home. Mr. Ledbetter designed the home so that they could avoid each other. Now, some of you dads are probably thinking like, hey, that's actually not a bad idea, right? Don't admit that out loud to your kids, please. So he designed this house. Everybody, even him and his spouse, had their own separate bedrooms. They had their own independent hallways. And he said, we wanted our own hallways so we didn't have to bump into each other. Is that not absurd? They all had their own panic rooms, we might call it. So if they've just had a little too much interaction with a family member, they could go and lock themselves in their own panic room. Mr. Ledbetter, in 2004, in the Wall Street Journal, was quoted as saying this, he loved it because it gave us so many ways to avoid each other. This is his family he's talking about, who he said, I do to in a marriage ceremony. Is that not crazy? You know, it was not that long ago. I was raised, I'm 38 years old. I was raised in the time frame when everybody wanted open floor plans, right? I remember when my mom and dad started busting out walls at one of their houses. We want the open floor plan. We don't want walls, right? We want to entertain and just have everybody where it's just this open floor plan. But now, reading articles and reading articles about these custom home builders, they said this trend has actually... I'm sorry, my iPad's on and I'm getting text messages now, so I apologize. They're saying that trends are actually going backwards, and now custom home builders are saying people want secluded homes where they want lots of walls. They want little internet alcoves for all of their children, and they want these very secluded spaces. And I would say to that is the remedy to create a dysfunctional family, is it not? Daniel and I were talking about dinner last night, and I don't mean to step on toes here, but all these kids have TVs in their bedrooms now. They come home from school and they just go to their room, and we might see them at dinner, we might not. We might drop off some McDonald's at their door and say, see you tomorrow morning, right? That creates dysfunctional families. In church, I would ask you, is that what we want? I don't know about you. I don't need a blueprint to create dysfunction in my family. I just open my mouth and I generally create dysfunction. I need no help there. Here at Summit Church, we are aiming for something vastly different. We aim for a flourishing family. Not only for us as a church unit, but also for you as an individual unit, where we grow together, not apart. We want to grow together as a church, and by doing that, we also want you to grow together as a family in your home. So that's where we come up with this idea of the series for the next 5 or 6 weeks, Family Matters. It's a series for growth. It's a growth for us as a church, but also, more importantly, for you as a family. Throughout this next 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to talk about discipleship, family discipleship, marriage, singleness, technology, and many other issues that our families face today. Because here at Summit, we believe our families matter. We believe the family is the most important institution that God has ever designed for any of us. And as a church, we believe in protecting the family unit and helping you equip your family at home. So today we're going to start with kind of this overview of an idea of what a flourishing family looks like. And we're not going to be like, well, I'm not going to get up here and talk about my family because I don't have it figured out. I would go a step farther and say, nobody in this room really has it figured out when it comes to a flourishing family. Now, some of us may be a little better than others, but we all have room for growth in this. So we're going to look at some biblical principles from one of the most dysfunctional families in the Bible. But it's also a story of redemption. And that is what we're going to talk about this morning. And we're going to look at Jacob's family. Jacob's family is going to be found in the book of Genesis. And whether you're a family of one this morning, meaning you're single, or you're a couple, newlyweds, or you have 10 kids, we all have room to grow this morning. And this morning we're going to start by considering 4 principles from the story of Jacob. And this morning is going to look a little bit different. A lot of times in the church world, we read 20 verses and then we pull 3 points out of it. I'm going to kind of narrate more because we're going to be looking at like 8 chapters. So I'm going to kind of tell the story of Jacob and then point us to some verses where I'm getting this story from. So lessons from Jacob's family. We're going to see dysfunction, but we're also going to get to see redemption this morning. Jacob's family is found specifically in chapter 29 of Genesis, but we can go back to 27, and it runs for the next 7 or 8 chapters in the book of Genesis. And we're going to look at some of the negative experiences in his life, because a lot of times I believe we learn more from seeing negative experiences in life so that we can avoid pitfalls as parents. So that we can say, hey, I don't want to do that with my kids. But then we're also going to look at some of his positive moments to help us build and try to attain this idea of a flourishing family. So let's dive in. We're going to look at 4 principles, and the first principle we can learn from Jacob is this: do not allow deception in your family. Don't allow deception. Don't allow lies in your family. And maybe you think, Pastor Josh, you call me a liar already? I hadn't been here 10 minutes, you're already calling me a liar. When we think about it, we all have a little bit of deception in our families, probably. Deception is a dangerous reality that lives in many homes on some level. Now, I'm not saying you get up and lie to your kids or your parents every day, but at some level, a lot of times there is deception, and it can lead to a tremendous amount of pain. And one of the things about deception in the family is, ironically, the person doing the deception, the deceiving, they think they get away with it, right? So what do they do more? They deceive a little more. And then they deceive a little more and a little more. And they're like, well, this is working out, so I'm just going to keep on lying. But it always comes back, pardon my French, to bite them in the butt, right? It's like this huge lie grows in the family, and then ultimately the truth comes out, and it generally comes back to haunt them in a way that they did not see coming. And Jacob is a prime example of exactly that. In Genesis chapter 29, Jacob has been encouraged by his mother to go visit his uncle Laban to find a wife. Now, understand that's a little bit weird. We know I would not encourage you to go to your uncle's house to try to find a wife today. But this is Genesis, this is Old Testament, so that was kind of the norm. So Jacob's mom says, hey, we want you to go to Uncle Laban's house and you need to find a wife for yourself. Well, Jacob arrives, he falls in love with Rachel. He's got googly eyes for Rachel. And Uncle Laban says, okay, here's the deal, Jacob. You can marry Rachel, but you owe me 7 years of hard work and labor in my fields. Well, Jacob's like, hey, that's not a bad deal. And dads, if you have daughters at home, hey, that's not a bad deal either. Like, I don't know how it'd work out, but you could try. So Laban and Jacob, they have this gentleman's handshake. Okay, 7 years of service. Genesis chapter 29, verse 20 says, and this is Jacob's account, he said, those years seemed like only a few days because of his love for her. What does that tell us? He was head over heels mad about Rachel. He was full on in love with Rachel. So Jacob works for these 7 years, and they just fly by because he's got Rachel in mind. But on the wedding night, Uncle Laban, with a name like Laban, we already kind of know like he's a sly guy, right? That's not a normal name. Laban comes up with this idea to deceive Jacob. So he slides in Rachel's older sister, Leah, instead of Rachel. Well, Jacob and who he thinks is Leah, they have this huge wedding night, festivities. I'm assuming there's lots of wine being drunk in this exercise of a wedding. And the next morning, Jacob wakes up and rolls over to his wife, Rachel, and realizes, just kidding, that's not Rachel, that's Leah. The old switcheroo has been pulled on Jacob. Now, guys, I realize if you're like me, I am full-blooded man. I love my wife. I have lots of questions here, and I don't have answers for you. I think I would know if I did not go to bed with my wife on my honeymoon night. Many scholars have tried to explain this, and I'm not going to try to explain it. Wine is one thing. Also, in that day and age, they had lots of veils for wedding ceremonies. I still think I would know if I wasn't going to bed with my wife. But whatever, that's not the point of this story. The point of this story is Jacob woke up, and it was not Rachel, it was Leah. And he was angry. He was upset. I would be angry. I would be very upset. So Jacob wakes up, and instantly Jacob is just angry. What has my uncle Laban done to me? And as we read this, as I tell this story, and there it is, Genesis 29, 25, it says, and in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Hey, we had a gentleman's agreement. We had a handshake, 7 years. And now you have deceived me. And now it's easy for us, and I purposely read this story this way, it's easy for us to look at Jacob and say, poor Jacob. Man, that dude, he got done dirty. But if we go back 2 chapters before, what we learn is Jacob does not come to this situation with clean hands. He's not innocent in all of this. In Genesis chapter 27, Jacob deceives his father Isaac. So Isaac is the patriarch of the family. And then Jacob is one of his sons. And Jacob and his mother come up with this idea to steal Esau, his brother's blessing. Jacob and Esau are the 2 sons of Isaac. And it was the custom in that day for the eldest son, who would have been Esau, to get the special blessing from the Father. Now, when we think, if we just kind of read this on the surface, we think, oh, a special blessing, big deal. What that means is he was going to inherit everything. He was getting the land, he was getting the property, he was getting all the money in the bank. This was a huge blessing that was rightfully Esau's, that Jacob and his mother come in and kind of steal right out from their brother Esau. So Esau's out in the field, he's hunting, and they realize Jacob's he's to the point in his life where he's getting old, he's getting frail, he's going to pass away. It's time for it's time for Isaac to give the blessing, to give over everything to the son Esau. And then Jacob and mom come in and swindle Isaac. Now, Isaac's eyesight was bad in those days. He was an older man, so it was pretty easy to fool dad, right? Jacob could fool his dad pretty easily. And while Esau's out hunting, Jacob and mom come in and they steal the blessing that is intended rightfully for Esau. So we have some major deception taking place. This is a family, guys. This is mom, dad, and two sons. And they are deceiving each other. So there's major deception taking place in this family. So then that gets us to Genesis chapter 27 and verse 41. Esau comes home. Esau is hot. And understand, I don't want to paint this image too, like whatever. Jacob's tenderhearted. Esau's a man's man, right? So Jacob fears Esau a little bit, right? Esau's out hunting. Jacob's with mom sewing in the next room, right? Like, that's kind of the image we get. So, Jacob's he's a little scared of Esau. So Genesis 27:41 says, now Esau hated Jacob because the blessing which was his father's had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother. So what Esau's saying is, let me put this in plain English. Esau's saying, hey, when dad dies, you're dead, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying, once dad's out of the picture, I am coming to hunt you down. So this forces Jacob to flee. Jacob and mom say, you know what? Go see Uncle Laban, find a woman, get out of here. And this is where the deception comes back to haunt Jacob. So Jacob is not coming to this situation with clean hands. Jacob already has his hands very, very dirty. And what we're going to see as we continue on this morning, we're going to see this deception, this cycle continue all throughout Jacob's life, even with his own sons. Deception in the family always leads to anger and bitterness and broken relationships. It's never a good thing. Let me put it like this. I hope none of you want this. But if you want to really mess your family up, keep secrets and lie to them. Right? It is going to wreak havoc on your family. But every time we tell the truth to our family, the family always wins. No matter what the truth is. If we tell the truth with love, the family will always win. We need to stomp it out, the deception. Wherever we see deception in our family unit, we cannot let it take root in our family. The second principle we can learn from Jacob is this. We need to cast out competition in our families. We don't need to have competition in the family unit. Competition in home creates tension, it creates pain, it just creates uncomfortableness. So after Uncle Laban's deception, so we got Jacob. Remember, he's fled because he lied on his own. He stole the birthright. So now he's fled to Uncle Laban's house. Uncle Laban plays a mean trick. He marries the wrong sister. Well, the problem is Jacob still has googly eyes for Rachel. He's married to Leah, but he loves Rachel. So Uncle Laban, being a businessman, says, hey, I have a proposition for you. I'll let you work another 7 years, and you can marry Rachel. Now, Uncle Laban's pretty smart, really, when you think. He's getting some free labor out of this deal, right? So Jacob, being a man that is in love with Rachel, another gentleman's handshake. Hey, let's do this. So fast forward 7 more years. We're now 14 years from being at Uncle Laban's house. Now Jacob has 2 wives who are sisters. Men, think about that for a second. That's bad, right? You don't have to be a scholar to figure this one out. That is not good. And these two sisters are competing for the same man's affection, love, and attention. I don't know about you guys, I struggle with one wife. Now, in this culture, bearing sons was like, that was, in the American culture, as men, we want to provide a stable life for our wife, right? If we can provide a good income, that's the thing. In that culture, it was all about bearing a son, continuing the name. That was the primary way for the husband's love. So Leah, remember, and I want to make sure everybody's on board here, Leah is the wife that he was tricked into marrying, has 4 sons right off the get-go. She's just popping them out. She's ready to go. But understand, she did have a 7-year head start, so it's kind of not fair. So she has 4 sons. Rachel has no sons. And that takes us to Genesis chapter 30, verse 1. And this is when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, and she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children or I shall die." She's instantly jealous of her sister. 4 sons, 0. 7-year head start. She's got to love him, right? She just eat up with envy. Give me children or I'll die. And then Jacob, I tell my wife and my kids all this all the time. If you are angry to me, I'm probably going to talk angry back to you, right? It's all about how we talk. Well, she talks angry to Jacob, so Jacob's angry right back at her. In verse 2, he says, Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I God? What do you want me to do? You have a part in this too, right? Like, I'm not God. I can't make you have children." So there's this strife in their family. So the 2 sisters are going at it. Now Jacob's got 2 angry wives. And guys, I don't know why we see this over and over in the Old Testament. You would think one person in the Old Testament would do this. But they just continue to do it. So Rachel says, "I've got an idea." And this is never good when they approach like this. "I can't give you sons, but I bet my maidservant can." What are we thinking here? We've already seen this before in the Old Testament. It does not work out. So she said, Jacob should have said no. He should have been a man, pulled his pants up and said, "No, woman, get in your place," right? That's what he should have done, but he doesn't. He says, "Okay." And Bilhah comes to Jacob and they bear children. So now we have 3 women and multiple kids. Now, Leah says, "I've already given you kids, but I'm not going to be outdone by my baby sister. So you should take one of my slaves and go have children with one of them." Is that not insane? So that's what happens. She says, "Here's my servant, Zilpah, and now you go have children with them." So now we have 4 wives, and we end up with 13 children total. So we have this very unhealthy competition taking place. Very unhealthy. And it just keeps escalating until we get about 11 kids later, 13 in total. But when we get to 11, Rachel still has no kids of her own. And she is just devastated. And this competition stems from a strict violation of God's design for marriage. Genesis 2:2, we won't turn there, but in the beginning, God said, "Hey, we are designed for one man and one woman. Not one man and 4 women, not one woman and one woman, not one man and one man and one woman." And polygamy, even though culturally it was very accepted then, that still was not God's plan or design for Jacob or anybody in that life. God's plan was for one man and one woman. Now, today in our homes, I pray that your competition looks much different than Jacob's does. But whether it's divided loyalties because of divorce, step-family conflicts, a spouse competing for affection, maybe, one of the things that I always cringe when I hear it, but it's culturally accepted is, "Oh, that's my work wife, that's my work husband." That is so unhealthy. We think it's funny, but I can tell you what would happen if I told that to my wife, Kim. I would have a black eye. No doubt. Because we quickly find ourselves in this competition. We're competing for one another. And it creates pain and strife in our family, and it's unhealthy. Church, if competition exists in your home, end it. Guys, and this is, honestly, I put this note in here for me more than anybody else. If football is a problem and it competes with your wife or your kids, turn the dang game off. Your wife and children should always be above a football game or an elk hunting trip or a work wife or a work husband. Don't let your spouse or children compete for your love and attention. Because one day, I'm quickly finding this out. My kids are close to leaving the house already, and we don't get that time back. Unity, not division, leads to a flourishing family. The third principle we can learn from Jacob's family is this: fight off favoritism and honor everyone equally. Favoritism, man, it plagued Jacob's family at every single stage of it. In Genesis 27, just to quickly rehash it, Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob because he brought him wild game. Rebekah loved Jacob and his tender heart. And how do we think this is going to work out? How do we think favoritism in the home is going to work out? I tell my kids this all the time. Not so much now. They used to be, Dad, who do you love more? I said, well, I love your mom the most because your mom gave me you. Well, we know you love Mom more. Who do you love me, Tay or Colton more? I love you both the same. I don't love you one or the other, right? And as parents, sometimes we might favor our kids a little more, but we have to love our kids equally. You know, we often think how we raise our kids only affects our kids. But Jacob is a living example that how our kids are raised affects generations and generations to come. Parents, if you want to mess up your home, pick a favorite child and let all the other siblings know that is your favorite child. You are sure to mess up your home. It will never end well. Jacob carries the way he was raised into his own family. Jacob says, well, man, my dad liked Esau. He liked my brother more than he liked me. And my mom liked me more than he liked Esau. So, you know what? I've got these 13 kids now by 4 women. I'm just going to pick a favorite for myself. And because I loved Rachel the most, when Rachel finally gives me my son Joseph, I'm going to love Joseph the most. I mean, think about that. Jacob ends up with 13 kids and 4 wives. So when Rachel and him finally conceive the son, she favors Joseph. So much so that they give Joseph the coat of many colors. And if you were raised in church, you know the song you could sing, the Joseph and the coat of many colors. And you guys know Joseph's brothers, that doesn't go well, right? I mean, that's not, I mean, if you have 12 siblings and you're the favorite and the baby, that's never going to end well. So the favoritism angers Joseph's brothers. They grew up hating Joseph. So they plot to kill him. And eventually they kind of, I don't want to say chicken out because that would be inappropriate. They kind of come to their senses, right? They're like, maybe we shouldn't kill our brother. We could just sell him off into slavery and we wouldn't have the weight of murder on our conscience, but we would never have to worry about Joseph again. So they sell him off into slavery. I would say this: favoritism wounds deeply and often for a lifetime. You know, we think, oh, well, my son's athletic and I'm athletic, so I'm just going to kind of favor my son. I don't have a lot in common with my daughter. And it's just kind of subconscious, but those things can cut wounds that are deep, that last a lifetime to our kids. And then as we see in the story of Jacob, it will affect how they raise their kids. And we'll see this generational cycle that is just quite honestly very unhealthy. So a word of caution to parents in the room. I would say this: be careful how we talk about our kids. I honestly believe we should avoid comments like, she's our different one, or he's not the athlete his brother is, right? And they're so innocent because they're true, right? Like, he's not the athlete his brother is. But these words, even in a jest kind of funny comment, can devastate a child if they're overheard. Don't compare siblings or withhold affection from one another. I would offer this advice. Value each child for who God made them to be, not who you expect them to be. Think about that for a minute. Value for them for what God designed them to be, not what you as mom and dad want them to be. Now understand, we always discipline sin, right? We have to discipline sin as parents, as grandparents, as great-grandparents, as aunts, uncles. We always discipline sin. We need to call out the sin that we see in our kids' lives, but we should always celebrate their unique design. The fourth and final principle where we're going to finish up here this morning is this, where we can learn from Jacob's family. Focus on forgiveness. We need to break the cycle of revenge. Now, I don't know about you guys. When I'm wronged, I love revenge, right? Kim learned the hard way when we were in college together. She played a little small practical joke on me. And she said, I know you're going to get me back. And I was like, we are. Yeah. She was like, when do you think that'll be? And I was like, meh. So she went to work one day, about 6 months later, because, you gotta spread it out. Got to keep her waiting. So 6 months later, she went to work, and she came out at 9 o'clock from the daycare, and her car was gone. I had it towed. And I was sitting in the next parking lot over filming. And I learned that was probably too far. But I love revenge. It's so fun. You're just like, yes. It's the American thing, right? As Americans, we want revenge. But that's not what God's calling us to. I recently came across this pretty wild story. One of the more wild stories I've ever read. I want to share it with you guys. An ER nurse, this is coming from the standpoint of the ER nurse. She's telling the story. And she said, I'm going to read this so I'll make sure I get it right. She said she had a couple in the operating room preparing for surgery, and both the wife and the husband had gunshot wounds. Now, when you first start reading this article, when you first hear me say this, you're probably thinking, oh, that's terrible. Like somebody broke in their home, they stopped a burglar, something, they got pulled over, whatever, something bad happened to them. Like, oh my goodness, did, something terrible happen? Well, what happened was, the husband secures a new job, this job that he's been wanting for so long. He finally gets the job. His first day is tomorrow morning. He asks his wife, hey, please set the alarm clock tonight. Get me up extra early so that I can get to this dream job that I've been wanting for so long. Well, she forgot to set the alarm. He wakes up in a haste an hour late to his dream job. He's so angry with his wife, he pulls out his gun and shoots his wife in the arm. This is a true story, by the way. Well, she's pretty mad herself. She goes into her nightstand, pulls out her gun, and shoots him in the arm. So now we have 2 gunshot victims, both in the arm. And the ER nurse says, so here we are getting ready for surgery, and they are each handcuffed to their gurneys with a sheriff deputy standing in between them. And this is the best part of the whole story. She said, I cannot make this up, and I quote, the nurse said, they started crying, and she said, oh, honey, I love you so much. I'm so sorry I shot you. That is a very humorous example, but I would say forgiveness is probably better than before guns start coming out, right? Like, we might should do some counseling if you get to that point. Joseph's story shows true forgiveness. Now, I want everybody to be on. I want to make sure we're all here. So we've got Isaac. Isaac's the patriarch of the family, right? And then we got Jacob. And then Joseph is the son of Jacob, right? Coat of many colors. He's the one from Rachel. He's been competing with all this. Joseph had all this drama in his life. And then Joseph's brothers, by 4 different moms, right, hate this little guy. They can't stand him because he's the favorite. They sell him into slavery. And we could preach a whole sermon series on Joseph. But basically, he has this life where he's just sold into slavery from one thing to the other. He never has a fair shake at life. But God is just faithful to him because Joseph is faithful to God. And through pain and situations, eventually Joseph ends up in Egypt and in this place of great power. And while he's in this position, there's a famine over the entire land. And who lives in this land? Joseph's brothers. And there's this famine, and nobody has food. So all the families have to go to who? They have to go to Joseph and ask for food. And who comes in line? There's this huge line. Joseph, yeah, let's give them some grain. Let's give them some peanuts and whatever. Let's give them food. And who comes up in line? Joseph's brothers. Now, if you're like me and you got that little hoo, right? Here we go, Joseph. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Dish it out, buddy. Now, understand, Joseph is in a position of power. He could have had him thrown into slavery. He could have had him thrown into a lion's den. He could have just had him outright murdered. And nobody would question Joseph because Joseph is in power. Nobody would have questioned that. He could have said, hey, I don't like these guys. They don't look right. Whatever. Now, Joseph instantly recognizes his brothers. Joseph's brothers do not recognize him. Joseph was thrown, in the pit and sold into slavery when he was just a young teenager. Now he's a full-grown, strong man, so they don't really recognize him. In their minds, Joseph is like not even alive anymore. So they don't realize that this is Joseph. Now, put ourselves in Joseph's shoes for a minute. What would we do? I told you what I did to Kim. I love revenge, man. It's a powerful thing, right? Joseph has this decision to make, but he doesn't do anything bad. Instead, he weeps at the sight of his brothers and eventually reveals himself in Genesis chapter 45, verse 45. And he sees it like he knows once I reveal myself to my brothers, they're going to be scared to death. Genesis 45:5 says, he tells them, don't be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me into slavery, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Joseph could come in and just hammer his brothers. He said, hey, actually, you selling me into slavery, that was the best thing you guys could have done. Now, you're like, what? And even I think as his brothers, they had to be thinking, this is a trick. Don't fall for it. This is a trick. His forgiveness ultimately ends up restoring the family, rescues the family, Jacob's family, from redemption, and then reunites Joseph and Jacob as father and son. Remember, he thinks his son is gone, dead, it's over, and now the whole family is reunited. Forgiveness breaks the cycle of revenge. Much as we love it as Americans, it brings us hope and healing to our families when we pursue forgiveness instead of revenge. By living out forgiveness, we can all find hope and healing for our families. As we close this morning and our musicians prepare to come, I think we all want healthy families this morning. It's something we strive for. We want healthy families where God is honored, but none of us are fully there yet. Jacob's story gives us hope that it's never, ever too late to change. I don't think any of us this morning have experienced the dysfunction that Jacob experienced in his life. But we see that there was change made. This morning, whether your kids are in high school, elementary school, out of the house, your kids have now given you grandkids. Maybe your grandkids have even given you great-grandkids. Don't throw in the towel yet. Stay faithful. Root out deception in your home. Root out competition in your home. Don't allow favoritism to sneak into your home. And focus instead on forgiveness. Be intentional, even when it's really, really difficult. God can and will restore relationships. He can restore that relationship with your estranged son, teenage daughter, or struggling spouse, whatever it may be. We serve a God where anything is possible, including healing our broken homes. I started by saying this, and I'll end by saying this. The family is the single greatest unit that God has ever designed. Let's use it to glorify and honor Him. Will you pray with me? God, we love you. We thank you so much for the family unit. And God, we know none of us are perfect parents in here this morning. None of us are perfect grandparents or aunts or uncles. But God, I pray this morning that this would not be a sermon that we just want to convict people about changing their family. God, no, Lord, we just want to challenge people to have the best family that they possibly can. Because, God, we believe you designed us to flourish, not be dysfunctional. God, I pray over the next few minutes as we sing a song and before we get out and go out and eat food trucks this afternoon, God, I pray that we would just quickly examine our home life and say, what can we do to become a flourishing family this week instead of family of dysfunction? God, we love you. It's your Son's precious name we pray. Amen.